This is me. I'm not normally orange and fluffy, but with all the pandemic, this is my way around the I can't film myself with another person problem. And also my way around the I don't have enough standing lamps to light a full room for video problem. My friend Kat is a writer. They have one of those day jobs that keeps them from ever actually writing. But today we met up for some co working and they brought along what, I might add, is a very convincing laptop to spend some time writing. How's the story going?
It's been better. I can't find the story I started writing last summer. It isn't in recent files. I tried searching, but I can't remember the file name and none of my guesses have worked. I'm super frustrated.
Well, where did you save it?
From my writing app?
No, I mean, what directory did you put it in?
Directory?
Also called a folder? Like desktop, documents? Maybe you have a folder where you keep your writing projects?
I just saved it where my writing app puts things. Maybe documents?
Many people don't think about file organization, especially if someone has worked mostly with mobile devices like phones and tablets. They might never have been confronted with file organization. Mobile systems manage files behind the scenes. They trade user control for ease of use. For the casual user, this is often good enough, but if you're switching from a mobile device to a computer, it's often because you need the power that a tablet lacks. You know that thing on a mobile device where an app stops being maintained and you can't get your data out to use with another app, so you have to start over? That's at least part of the control over your own data that you give up when you use a mobile app. They usually keep files in their own hidden structure, and you can't access your data unless the developers let you export your data. To be honest, sometimes the convenience is worth it. That's why we do it. I wouldn't trade my mobile to-do list for any amount of control. I won't use it if it's not easy, and frankly, it would be easier for me to remake my list if the app stops being supported than to not have it on my phone. For projects that we are putting a lot of work into that don't rely on that kind of convenience, what matters most is the control over our own data. Take Kat's story. Kat is planning on writing a story with multiple illustrations. They aren't 100% sure where they go from there. Maybe a print book, maybe an ebook, maybe just a web page. This isn't a one-app project. They'll use a document editor, a drawing program, and either a layout program or something to edit HTML. Maybe both. When a programmer writes a program, they have to choose a default save location. Most of them will choose your Documents folder, but this isn't true all of the time. The truth is, most programmers keep their data carefully organized. They think you'll do the same thing. The save window starts at a default location, but they expect you to use it to find the place in your directory structure where the file belongs based on your own organizational scheme. Many people just click OK, which is kind of like dumping junk on your desktop. It just mounds up higher and higher until going through it and finding anything becomes a nightmare. But with your physical desktop, physics constrains you. At some point, it mounds up too high and you have to deal with it before it slides off. Because your Documents folder is virtual, you can end up with thousands of files in there and not be able to find anything except through the recent file display on your app, or search if you remember enough of the file name. Kat's problem is that they haven't had a chance to work on their story for so long that their recent document files shows nothing but work stuff. Their story is buried. Let's look at where their story might be. It's probably in Documents. If they chose to save it elsewhere without a solid plan, they probably put it on the desktop. Some applications have different default save locations. If you decide to organize your file system, you'll eventually come across them and be able to move them where you want them.
When you first log on, if you look at the directories in your File Explorer or Finder, you'll probably see Documents and Desktop right there. The other directory you'll probably see that you already regularly use is Downloads, which is where all major browsers save files that you download. These folders, Desktop, Documents, and Downloads, are all in your user directory. That means they're private to you, even if other users have logins on the same machine. Windows often puts My in front of the directory name to emphasize that it's private to the user. My doc. I'm not going to say My every time, because if I leave off the My, the names are pretty standard across operating systems. Your user directory isn't called user. It's the personal directory that you created when you set up your computer. Most people use some variation of their name. It's the same as your login. Most Unix systems, including Linux and Mac OS, have a library. This isn't intended for books. This is a library of stuff that your apps need to run. You probably shouldn't touch this unless you know what you're doing. You aren't likely to break the operating system if you mess with this, but if you delete anything in here, you might ruin the customization on some of the applications that you regularly use. When an application is installed using an installer instead of just telling you to drag it into the applications folder, it's usually installing some extra files that it needs in the library. This lets those files be personalized to different users while still letting the application be available to all of the users on the computer. If you uninstall with an uninstaller instead of just deleting the app, it will find all of the other files that belong to the app and delete them as well. This keeps your library from getting cluttered with files from apps that you no longer use. For most people, the Documents folder is where the action is. It's way too much to deal with if we have all our stuff in here unorganized. It becomes less like a file system and more like a giant box we toss things into. If Kat wants to find their file, they really need to deal with this. They don't have to do it all at once. Maybe they will just sort until they find their file. They could make a subdirectory called unorganized, and then go through a few files and sort them properly every time they have writer's block until the unorganized subdirectory is empty and they can delete it. There is no one way to organize your files, so I'll show you what I do as an example. The subdirectories of my Documents folder are Personal, where I keep things like taxes and garden plans, Projects, where I keep larger scale things like programs, art projects, and freelance gigs, and a folder for my school-related stuff. Each of these folders has a bunch of subdirectories inside it. But let's look at school. Inside my school directory, I have folders for every single class I've ever taught. Inside each of my class folders, I have subfolders for the different things I need to access when I'm thinking about that class. And I don't have any clutter in them that isn't related to the class I'm currently working on. The human brain can only cope with 5 to 9 things at a time. Organizing your drive with appropriately nesting subdirectories can help you find what you need fast. As a rule, you only want 5 to 9 things in each directory. The big exception to this is what psychologists call chunking. You can process similar things as a chunk. Take photos. Most of us have our computer configured to sync all of our photos in a single subdirectory. Because the directory is all photos with nothing else, we can mentally process it as a single thing. Photos. When you have more than 9 items, but they're the same kind of thing, you can make a chunk of them by putting them in a subdirectory together. The real struggle with an unorganized Documents folder is that it holds many different kinds of intermingled things. They aren't chunked. You've got ebooks, writing projects, taxes, art, recipes, plans, journals, game walkthroughs, schoolwork, and so on. Kat needs to find a way to organize their files that works for them. If they end up with more than 9 subdirectories in any folder, they should try to figure out how they can subdivide it further so that the contents of each directory is easy to grok when they look at it. Now that we've gotten organization out of the way, let's look at the rest of the directory structure. All of this stuff is organized inside my user directory. The typical user doesn't do much with the rest of the file system, but let's look at what's there. The user directory is inside a users directory. That's plural. If I have a shared computer, each person has their own login, and each will be a subdirectory of users. These are private, so users can't look inside the directories that belong to other users. On the same level, there's a folder full of apps. It might be called Applications on Mac, Program Files on Windows, or Bin on Linux. This is where applications you run live. It's outside of users so that all users that share a machine can run applications, even though all their individual data is in their user directory. You can put applications in other places and they'll run, but it will be confusing to find them later. This is also where your OS lives. You'll see a folder called System or Windows, along with a bunch of other directories that, like the library in your user directory, are not the operating system itself, but they're resources it uses. Again, don't touch any of these if you don't know what they're for, and if it's safe to do so. Once we have so many subdirectories inside subdirectories inside subdirectories, this method of organization looks less like a file cabinet and more like a tree. The very bottom directory that everything else branches out of is called root. Root is represented by a slash on Unix systems, including Linux and Mac, and C:/ on Windows systems. You'll notice that Windows slashes face the other way from Unix slashes, So if you use the command line, be careful to use the slash that faces the proper direction for your operating system. As an aside, notice how Windows is specifically in the C drive, which is the main hard drive. If someone has multiple drives on Windows, they get to them by typing D:, E:, and so on. So how do you get to other drives in Unix systems? They all live in a folder called volumes that is found in the root directory. As far as typical users like Kat are concerned, the big take-home for them is that they should take control over their data by organizing their file structure. Once they separate out their work documents from their writing projects and put all of the files from each writing project in their own directory, they'll be able to find what they need and dive right in next time they sit down to start writing. I hope this helps you organize your own files so that you can use your computer more effectively, whether it's for work or fun.